Oh, good evening and welcome to the inaugural lecture of Christian Thielemann's tenure as the Humanitas Visiting Professor of Opera. We have to thank the Humanitas programme administered by the Weidenfeld-Hoffman Trust and Dame Vivian Duffield and the Claude Duffield Foundation who support the chair in opera. And my own thanks are due to Roger Allen and Peter Franklin, who are largely responsible for tomorrow's programme. Many of you will know that the series' founder, George Weidenfeld, died early yesterday, and the following text has been released by the Weidenfeld-Hoffman Trust. We have all been saddened to hear the news of Lord Weidenfeld's death. We have lost a great supporter of international education and debate. Through great personal effort, he gave scholars from across the world a unique opportunity to study in a world-class institution at Oxford and thereby change their lives. Their contributions, both to Oxford and to countries in which they live, will provide a lasting legacy of dialogue, discussion, and above all, peace. He was extremely proud of the scholars he supported, and we look forward to those continuing to provide these opportunities in his memory. Among the many projects Lord Weidenfeld devised was the Humanitas programme of visiting professorships to Oxford and Cambridge. Through his network of friends and contacts, he gave the universities unparalleled access to the most interesting names in the field of humanities. All have given generously of their time to lecture, to take part in conversations, and to share their expertise with the audiences in both universities. These are exchanges that are now feeding into the online communications across the world. While these words are those of the Weidenfeld-Hoffman Trust, they'll be echoed throughout this university, for George Weidenfeld was one of our long-standing friends and a supporter for all for which Oxford stands. Those of you who have followed the Opera Chair will know that we have had views of the Opera House from behind the scenes, from the administration, and from the stage with Joe Volpe, Gerard Mortier, and Renée Fleming. With the fourth holder of the chair, we move on to the conductor's podium, a vantage point which will give us all a different view of opera and the Opera House. And indeed, our lecture tonight is entitled A Conductor's Point of View, Commonalities and Differences Between Wagner and Strauss. Christian Thielemann is well known to all of you as a conductor of opera, and in particular, a conductor of Wagner and Strauss. He began his career at the Deutsche Oper in Berlin, and after engagements in Karlsruhe and Hanover, he joined the Rhine Opera in Düsseldorf. After a series of appointments, he returned to Berlin to direct the Deutsche Oper until 2004, when he became musical director of the Munich Philharmonic, a post he occupied until 2011. In addition to his current position in Dresden, he has been artistic director of the Salzburg Easter Festival since 2013. Thielemann has also contributed to the birthday celebrations for Wagner and Strauss for the past 2 years with numerous new productions in Salzburg and with the Staatskapelle concerts in the Semperoper. Opera and Welt magazine awarded him the title Conductor of the Year for his interpretation of Frau Erna Schatten at the Salzburg Festival of 2011. He made his debut at the Bayreuth Festival in 2000, conducting Der Meistersinger, and after annual appearances was in 2010 appointed as the festival's music advisor, and then in 2015 the music director of the festival. He also has a comprehensive catalogue of recordings that includes works by Beethoven, Liszt, Bruckner, Reger, Pfitzner and Busoni, as well as the operas of Arabella, Ariadne auf Naxos, Elektra and Parsifal. He is an honorary member of the Royal Academy of Music and holds honorary doctorates from the Franz Liszt College of Music in Weimar and from the Catholic University of Leuven. In May 2015, he was awarded the Richard Wagner Prize by the Richard Wagner Society of Leipzig. Ladies and gentlemen, Christian Thielemann.
Ladies and gentlemen, I wanted to say something about George Weidenfeld before I start telling you about a conductor who talks, because as you know, conductors who talk don't have a very concentrated orchestra. That's one of the first things one gets told if you have conducting lessons. But coming back to George was a wonderful friend for me, and I've known him for 7 years only. It was amazing how a person like him with 90, 92, 93, 94 years could attract so much attention from younger people, much younger people who looked for his advice and who were also moved by his very clear views of the political situation. I mean, he was in an age in which he could permit himself nearly anything, but he would never say it in a negative way. And I've had wonderful evenings with him, and I was really deeply shocked when I heard these news. And we thought that our whole speech and our what we are planning now here would not happen, but it happens. And I think it's also in his sense that we just continue. So I'm sometimes with my thoughts a little bit more with him than I should be with that, what I'm going to say. So coming back to a conductor who talks. I told you before that an orchestra needs good advice, and sometimes you need only what you call chemistry. You look at somebody, first flute player or violin players, and you get a response with the eyes or with, I don't know. You have to look into their eyes. A conductor who doesn't look into their eyes or is not willing to do that is not a good conductor. It has to do with, not so much to do with leadership, it has to do more with contact and with music making and accepting that what a musician offers you. So what has that to do with Wagner and Strauss? I start a little bit earlier to tell you how I got an advice from Herbert von Karajan, which was when I got this advice, I was not shocked, but I was confused. I was about 16 years old, and I had my first piano lessons with the wife of one of the first flute players of Berlin Philharmonic, Demmler. And he heard me playing, and he said, Karajan is always interested in meeting young people. I asked if this young man can ask him some questions, because I said, yes, I would like to be a conductor. I think that's a wonderful thing. First, I tried to become an organist, but as everybody piano player knows, it's nearly impossible to teach oneself organ playing when you are a piano player, because the technique is so much different that you ruin your piano technique. And that was noticed by my piano teacher, and she said to me, "You're not playing the organ, are you?" And I said, yes, I have to admit, because I always was so, I was raving about Bach, organ music and other organ music. So I thought, what is better than playing the organ is probably having people in which the organ is also participating, but that can be an orchestra. And so I saw many conductors, I saw them and I heard them, and I was not, I'm still now not impressed by people who want to make a good and elegant figure. It's nice if the movements are elegant and look good, yeah? But it is not necessarily, it is not so important for the music which is going to come out. If you see older conductors, the very famous of the past, Knappertsbusch or Furtwängler, you cannot call the conducting elegant. But is that necessary that it's elegant? So coming back to Karajan, he offered me that I could come to talk to him for 10 minutes and asked him, Mr. von Karajan, how do I become a conductor? What do I have to do? And I expected, in my age, 16, I mean, I was dreaming about Beethoven 9, Tristan Meistersinger, Beethoven symphonies, Schumann, Bruckner, Brahms, the big repertoire, La Mer and these things. And he would talk to me about, you have to go to an opera house and you have to be a korrepetitor, which means somebody who works with singers, because you have to learn to breathe with singers. And then he talked about operetta and about Merry Widow, Lustige Witwe, and Land des Lächelns, and these titles, and about Tosca and about Bohème. And he didn't talk about Meistersinger. what I had expected. I thought I would go out and would go out. Now I know in 3 years I can conduct Meistersinger. So he said, come back when you finish school, because he gave me the strong advice, you never know what happens if you have enough talent and if you are lucky enough to do it, so finish your school. That's also a good advice, because many people leave school very, very early and then you don't have the opportunity to study. Later, I followed his advice and I began my conducting career as a Korrepetitor at the Deutsche Oper Berlin. So this is a point in which a big repertoire is required. You have to learn all these operas from Così fan tutte to Bohème, from Palestrina to Tristan, so nearly everything. La Chute de la Maison Huchère, to Ravel, to all these things which are in the plan of the theater. And so you learn what that means, breathing with singers. And you learn what it means to be a Kapellmeister. Now you know what I want to say. I can tell you one story I experienced when I was conducting one of the first times in London, that I heard somebody saying about a conductor, I don't know whose name it was, and they said, oh, he is only a Kapellmeister. Well, I was surprised, because I had grown up with a very positive meaning of Kapellmeister. And then they explained to me, no, Kapellmeister means more, it's a boring 1, 2, 3, 4 conductor with no fantasy. I said, but what is the difference between a maestro and a Kapellmeister? There is none. That's one, is it in German, and the next is the Italian translation. And so, yeah, as you know. So but that's an interesting point. And we come back to Karajan and his advice of breathing with singers and knowing what singers need. Why singers? Because singers need special attention, more attention than a violin player or a pianist. You know, they have only 2 vocal cords and feel very often weak because there is a big orchestra playing, and sometimes they are right. Conductors do not have the orchestra and bring it not so much down to a piano or to a pianissimo that they can really sing without a big effort, and that they don't ruin the vocal cords. So this and other things like psychology and all these, let's say, backstage or craftsmanship things mean to be a Kapellmeister. And that was what Karajan suggested to me, that one learns step by step, how do I deal with a very large orchestra? And I mean, I was, as I think many people in an age about 13, 14, 15, you get a Wagner infection, or you don't. Once you have this infection, you will not lose this disease anymore, and you don't want to, because it would be terrible to lose the fascination for Wagner and Strauss. In these years, when you are so young, you don't think about any political or other problems which could come together with music. You just choose that what you like. It can be Mahler, it can be whatever. It has to be romantic in any case. Nothing against Mozart and Bach. So Bach for me was always romantic, and Mozart in a certain way too. But that is something which one could talk about later. It is more important that, obviously, when I began my conducting career, I tried to get 2 pieces I would love to conduct, and I always loved to hear. That is not easy, because when you are young, you start the so-called Kapellmeister career in a smaller theater. I mean, I was lucky that I could begin as a Korrepetitor at the Deutsche Oper in Berlin, but for conducting, I went to a smaller theater in Gelsenkirchen and then to Hannover and so on, always one step higher. Is exactly that what Karajan had told me. He said, it's better if you are responsible in a smaller theater and you can do many things, because in fact, conducting 8 people or 10 or 15 is the same if you conduct 150. It's true. It sounds not right, but it is true. And look sometimes at films with older conductors, they don't even move very much. And the big orchestra, they play, everybody plays together. So you learn the technical skills for conducting. And that has so much to do with experience and with psychology and knowing what could happen ad esempio, I say. For example, it is, if you have done at the piano, probably the same part with 3 singers. Yeah? For example, let's say Siegfried. I had some private singers who came privately to me and said, I would like to learn Siegfried, and I pay you for every hour. Something that's very nice. I earn some money, and they learn Siegfried, and I learn it too, which is much more important. That's what Karajan said too to me. He said, you know, you can wake me up at 4 o'clock in the morning, and I know how Rosenkavalier goes, because I had this man in Ulm when he was very young, and he couldn't even read music. And Karajan would play him every note on the piano and so on. You know it by memory then. Yeah, and that is also something that for the giving the security for singers, that the singer, for example, knows now comes the really difficult spot, and the conductor conducts here, he conducts really properly, and in another place he lets things go as they come, and everybody can listen to each other and so. But this is a long experience you have to know the first time you conduct. Obviously, you conduct with big movements, and you want to express all what you have to express. Things get dangerous the bigger the orchestra gets. And now we approach Wagner and Strauss, finally, because they are a wonderful example for that, what a Kapellmeister has to do. I mean, you know also Tosca can be very loud. There are some loud pieces. Turandot can be really loud. Wagner can be really loud too. But that is not what was intended. You know that there are different, for example, Fliegender Holländer. He has a first version and a second one. The first version has in the instrumentation many harder spots. So instead of the strings, the brass plays, and so on and so on. And if you go through the score, you think it's a very youthful, fiery piece and very hard instrumentated. He had not the experience he had later. If you come back to Rienzi or to the first parts, he was learning too. And the orchestra can be and can get sometimes just too loud. So what do you do? I mean, imagine that when Wagner had composed his first operas, there was not the type of Wagner singer. Yeah? You know also the caricature of Wagner singer, the more, you know what I mean? Yeah. So there were very lyrical voices. And that was also the reason because he invented Bayreuth later, because he was unhappy with the orchestra sound in combination with the stage and also with the concentration. He didn't like conductors very much because, as you know, until in the 20s in Bayreuth, there was not the conductor on the program. All the singers, but conducting, you knew who conducted, but he was not written, was not printed. Very strange. And he was the first man who would switch off the lights in the theater. You know, time of Mozart and later, a theater performance was also a social event. I mean, it's also today a social event for many people, but it was much more when the king or the Kurfürst or somebody came it was very important where you were seated, yeah? Nearby or not so near, what meant that you did not have the connection to the royal family or so. This was as important as the performance. And therefore, a Baroque theater usually has this strange form, oval form, where many places are not so good to see the stage. But you ask yourself, why? Yeah. For example, I was visiting some of you probably know the Markgräfliche Opernhaus in Bayreuth, the old, wonderful Italian theater by Galli Bibbiena. And I was told that when you were sitting on the side, yeah, and the stage was on your left, and the big loge, when the Markgraf finally came, and you should look to the ceiling, because there was Apollo, who gave, with little birds flying down to the loge of the Markgraf, he gave so the commando to the Markgraf, please let the music or the art speak. And everything is in this movement. So you sit on the side. What do you want to see? First you want to see who's sitting on the other side. Oh, she's invited too, and he's invited too. And they sit more nearer to the Markgraf's place. Aha. So, or he sits not anymore so near. That means that they don't have. So then you should see the ceiling. You should see when finally the Markgraf appears. Then everybody stands up and so. And then you see also what they do on stage. But it's not the main thing. Wagner instead in the Festspielhaus didn't want that you were not concentrated on other things than on his own music. So the best thing is if you turn the lights off. So then you have nobody to see, and there are nothing on the side. Yeah, it's all these rows like in a Greek theater. It's very clever. I mean, you see the people who are sitting in front of you, but only from the back, which is not also so interesting. And you look, as in this theater here, you look directly to the stage. From the acoustic point of view, it's also a wonderful invention, because the orchestra, as you know, who has been in Bayreuth, is not that loud. It can play very loud, and I can tell you with my experience that sometimes you have to tell also the orchestra to play very clearly. You know, if you have an open pit in a normal opera house, yeah, you would sometimes tell the orchestra, please play it quite leggero, quite soft, staccato, for example, with the Meistersinger, a soft staccato. In Bayreuth, it's the opposite. You have to tell them you have to play. Why? Because with this pit, the sound going first to the stage, there developing and then coming back to the audience, it loses some of this kind of rhythm and pulse. So, and now we come back to the Kapellmeister's role. What I wanted to say with this Bayreuth 5 minutes to talk about Bayreuth, I wanted to say that in each theater and with each orchestra, a Kapellmeister has to work differently because the acoustics are different. And then the singers are different. Even from evening to evening. Can be that the soprano one evening has not so much voice. What do you do as a good conductor, as a good Kapellmeister? You get the orchestra to play softer. What can you do if the tenor is one evening, he's just faster? What can you do? You follow him. You don't kill him. You can do that too. If you hate him, then you will not have him again, and so. Yeah. So, but these are decisions you make in the very moment, you see? And I think coming back to the Karajan advice, that's what he meant. Be prepared. What singers what instrumentalists can do. And an opera performance is every evening a different performance. It's a live performance, as a piano concerto is. But I think pianists and violin players are more reliable because they don't have, no, you just, yeah, and you don't have this fear, you know, that the conductor, we are more in the pit, and there's only one singer on stage. So see how much Wagner developed then his writing. Not that I want to say that he got softer and softer, but he got more practical. He had a second version of Fliegender Holländer. And a piece like Tannhäuser, for example, is for the tenor, as everybody knows, a nightmare. It's probably René Collo, the famous tenor, said to me, it is the worst tenor role he knows, probably except Bacchus in Ariadne. But Tannhäuser has this tessitura in the beginning with the 3 songs he sings for Venus, which is a killer. And sometimes one witnesses these terrible moments and when a tenor is after Act 1 of Tannhäuser already not fresh, to put it this way. Things can happen. So what does it mean to come to terms with this kind of music? You have to learn pacing as a conductor and as a singer. But the conductor is the certain way because he has everything in the hands. He's the leading person, and in Bayreuth is it more leading than anywhere else because the conductor doesn't hear very well. And he is very much in the hands of his assistants. You wouldn't believe that, yes? I conduct in the pit, and there is an assistant, and I have the telephone, and he says, second bassoon a little more. I mean, they know me, and I know the acoustic, but I have to trust my assistants. There the orchestra could be a little bit softer. Then there are voices in Bayreuth which do not get through because the Wagner parts, soprano parts, for example, are very often not so high as you would expect. They're more in the middle register. And that means if the orchestra also has a kind of thicker sound, then the orchestra can cover easily the singers. So what does the clever Kapellmeister do? He has to see that various singers need also a variety of speed and of dynamic ranges. You can study that very well, also listening to different orchestras with a different orchestra tradition. For example, I'm very lucky that in Dresden, the Sächsische Staatskapelle has maintained their wonderful golden round sound, which is a miracle because in the times of the West and East Germany division, they did not have so much, let's call it fresh blood from everywhere. And they survived somehow in this atmosphere of building their own, getting their own pupils or their students as such good players that they could enter in the orchestra. I mean, this is a wonder that happened, and we enjoy it still. And they are very much they're very proud of the sound they kept, and that is something. If it is an opera orchestra, and I come back to opera orchestras, how do they deal with singers? If an opera orchestra is in the pit, seated quite high, first you would think, oh my God, they are going to kill the singers in any case. No, wrong. Because they can listen better. And as a bassoon player, or as a flute player, or a horn player, after a while you have the experience, and you know, if I hear the singer this way, I can give so much. Forte is never a forte. Mezzo forte is never a real What is a mezzo forte? It depends on the moment. Together with the conductor, obviously, but the orchestra can help very much, and the tradition of the orchestra as an opera orchestra. Flexibility, breathing with the singers, knowing also, now the next 10 bars or the next 5 minutes. It's one of the most difficult parts of the score. We have to be very, very careful. This is extremely tiring because Wagner operas, as you know, as Strauss are very long. And the pacing thing comes also always into the play because you cannot burn yourself in the first hour, then you don't arrive at the end. You don't help anybody, and in the orchestra it's the same. Horn players sometimes in certain pieces in Germany, they change. Meistersinger, for example, they play Act 1 and Act 2, and for Act 3, which is the long act, new wind players come in, first players come in. But the horn section is usually changed, and I think the brass section too. This is a tradition we have also for Parsifal. After Act 1 of Parsifal, I think the horns are, also they go home, and after the first act of Tristan the same, then the horn players play the stage music, Act 2 beginning, and then they go home and fresh horns come in. And the strings say, and we have to play all the evening. Yeah. But you see, these things have much to do with that what happened later. I mean, Wagner and Strauss, they say, yeah, he's a conductor for Wagner and Strauss. I think there is much truth, and it is also wrong, because Strauss is, as you know, much more based on the parlando and on lightness and on elegance. You cannot compare Wagner to Strauss, not even a Salome to a Wagner piece. That the harmonical system is sometimes, let's say, Strauss got inspired by Wagner, that is clear. Yeah? After Tristan, there was no escape possible. Tristan is Tristan, and Tristan changed the world in a certain way. And it's a very interesting thing I can tell you. It's something I didn't know until I came to Dresden. You know that in Dresden, 8 Strauss operas were performed the first time. And Ernst von Schuch was the chief conductor in these times. He did the premieres of, for example, for Salome, Elektra, and so on. And there was Strauss sitting in the audience, and he would say, I mean, this is really an astonishing fact. At a certain point, he would say to Schuch, please, the orchestra should play louder. I mean, which conductor would say an Elektra orchestra, please give more? What you do all the time is, don't give it. If you encourage the trumpets, they will give you more, but yes. You see, they had another, what I wanted to say is, it was obviously a different style of playing these scores. Because sometimes and I wondered, looking to Salome's score or Elektra's score, why does he write so many fortes and fortissimi? Why didn't he just write piano and mezzo forte? Because the strings were softer, as you know, and the winds and the instruments were not as developed as they are today. This is really a fact. There was no Strauss player existing, as there was no Wagner singer and Strauss singer existing, because it was the first premiere. So if you look to the first performance of Salome, who sang Salome? It was a lyrical soprano. Yeah, but how can you manage with that? The orchestra playing so loud and the soprano singing with a lyrical voice. Yes, because it was much more based on the Kapellmeister system. You have to reduce the sound of the orchestra according to the voice. And Strauss was famous also for changing notes. If a soprano for his first time and the first premiere, Arabella with Orsoleac, it's a famous. There are famous spots, and she said, "Look, I'm this place, and I have to have the high note." And then he said, "Oh, we take another lower note. Don't be afraid of that." He wanted his works to be played. I mean, this was very clever because he made a lot of money with that. And if a composer is too difficult, as you know, then the theaters say, "Oh God, here comes Mr. X or YZ," and we don't want to work with him because he demands so much. And Strauss was also not willing to do always his whole pieces. You know that Rosenkavalier has many cuts, and also Frauenschatten and other pieces. He wanted his works to be performed. That's very, very interesting. Therefore, there are so many Rosenkavalier suites, you know, with all these valsers. And also, he wanted that the music was known. And he was a practical composer and a conductor. And there you can learn very much. What does it mean to be, so let's say, an artist with your ideas about interpretation and how much is left when I follow so much the singers. So somebody would ask you, yeah, but you tell us the whole time that you follow only the singers, whereas your own idea. Yeah, you have to be as convincing as you can, and you can work with singers, but you have to give, especially singers, the psychological security, you know, that just the idea, sing for me, I will be with you, yeah, and I've made this experience very often, also with very famous singers. You know, you go to the dressing room of somebody before the concert, and you find out that the famous singer has cold hands up to here, and is nearly shaking. And then in front of the public there is the routine, and you would think in the hall, oh my God, she is singing, or he is singing so beautifully, there's no problem. If you knew what really happens in dressing rooms. But a conductor then, what's my task? What is what she needs most, or he needs most? The security on stage. And I've had it in one case that I said with somebody, when we come out and we out to the public and we just look into each other's eyes for 3 seconds. And then we start. And it helps. Yeah? It's the same when I come out, I'm nervous and I shake hands with the concertmaster. It's the same. He looked at me. So in the sense of, I'll play for you. Don't worry. Yeah, but that is, you know, so many differences between Wagner and Strauss are due also to, the capacity of a Kapellmeister to deal with different singers and obviously the different style of the pieces, because Strauss in his later years, as you know, he developed more refinement and lighter music. A capriccio, for example, is not a very loud piece. Daphne is, for the tenors, it's terrible, but for the soprano, it is more lyrical piece. And he was very much connected with orchestras who had the same taste, the same way of approaching music. So 8 operas in Dresden, and I think 6 or 7 in Vienna. These orchestras were his preferred orchestras, and he said that also during the work with them and even after the war. And he said, I feel so much at home with you, and you know exactly that what I want. Also, because the more you are associated with Mozart, the more you know about simplicity. Yeah? The more the music gets so energetical and you think it is all about hysteria, the more you have to know when you have to hold back. And sometimes, you know, a Strauss song, for example, the simplicity, let's call it the holy simplicity, yeah? Heilige Einfachheit, like in a Mozart concerto. Da 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 dee, da da. Don't do so much. Da 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 dee, da 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 da. You know, pianists look for every note for something. It's disturbing. You should not do nothing, but you should consider also the fact that there is also a 60% espressivo which has the intensity, you have to perform it with an intensity of 150%, but it's only 60. Hold back. You see? And for example, with Strauss, Lieder, they are rarely performed. Vier letzte Lieder is something one knows and which is also they are performed quite regularly. But for example, all the other beautiful Lieder by Strauss with orchestra are performed quite rarely because they are extremely difficult to sing and the orchestra is very big. Sometimes he requires for drei Hymnen, for example, he requires a Heldenleben orchestra. How can a voice manage with that? It can, if you know to hold back and if you remember how in the beginning when these works were performed the first time, how the way was to approach this music, softer than we are used to it. And the same, that comes from the Wagner experience he had. Bayreuth changed also the life of Strauss as a conductor there. As you know, he was a conductor also in Bayreuth. And you come to the point in which you know much more. There you need 45%, there you need 55%, there you need really 80%, and then you go back and so. But it has nothing, unfortunately, yes, for a conductor, it has not so much to do with that what is really written, because a fortissimo can also mean intensity. Yeah? Don't trust a fortissimo. Don't trust a forte. It has to do with the intensity of the moment. And you know that Strauss said about Salome and Elektra, he wanted to have them performed as if they were by Mendelssohn. This sounds funny, but I think the idea is completely right. And to watch if there are some interesting old excerpts from films when Strauss conducts. There's something, I think, an Alpensymphonie in 44 he conducts with Vienna Philharmonic. He stands in front of the orchestra and does really nothing, and they play like gods. So it has nothing to do with my movements. So sometimes it's even if the bigger the orchestra is, better it is if I stay quite calm, then everything is more concentrated, and then if I do more, then will come much more. But if they know, we'll come back to Kapellmeister's work. It's like if you play the piano, it's louder. If you play, it's softer. If you beat bigger, that means more, even if there is probably only a mezzo forte. But you have decided as a conductor, I would love to have more sound there. So we have more sound. But if I do less, and that is a very interesting thing. And if you see Strauss conduct here, I think he is really the perfect Kapellmeister. So he's not only a Kapellmeister. This is the high level of conducting, and I must say I don't even like the word Dirigent in Deutsch so much, because there's also people of you who understand German, there's also in the administration area, there is a position called Ministerialdirigent. I don't really know what they do, but they are in a ministry and they, I don't know, chief of some, I don't know what that really is. But I always thought that Dirigent is not a nice word. I think Kapellmeister looks much more like work, and also like, that you have to understand all the little difficulties which can come up. And therefore the opera is essential. And some of you might think, why doesn't he talk about the tone poems by Strauss? You're right. It is you see this wonderful film, the Kubrick film with Odyssee, is das 2001? With the Zarathustra beginning, this fabulous thing with the apes and so on. Yeah. 2000, yeah, mein Gott. Also what a glorious idea. And it is also performed very often this way, and it's written forte and fortissimo. And why not? But if you listen more to Zarathustra, then you find out later in the piece, it's not so loud anymore. It's much softer and much more elegant. So certainly he has sometimes, like in Heldenleben or Alpensymphonie, you know that he said when he had composed Alpensymphonie, now I know how to instrumentate, finally. I mean, he wanted to show off. He was also a gambler. You know, it's something I find deeply sympathetic and deeply positive. So yeah, when people ask me which composer you would like to know, you know, have dinner with, I don't know if one wouldn't be disappointed by some of the very famous composers. Won't name somebody, but there are some people who, I don't know, I would fear that after dinner I would say, my God, I'd see the music in another context now because I've known this person and I don't want that. But Strauss, I'm sure that this was a nice person to talk to, like Liszt, for example, or Mendelssohn. So I have the idea. And he was playing cards with musicians, and so I think he could be. He said he would play cards because he could forget. Only playing cards, he could forget music. There was always music. I mean, this is a nightmare, having always music in your ears. They said, therefore, he liked to play cards. And it is very important to always to come back to this combination of, you know, this is obviously a conductor as a figure people look at, and there's also a certain elegance required, or a nice frack, and so on. It's all okay. But the purpose of conducting is not to be beautiful. You should not make a fool out of yourself. You should, if people begin to laugh about that, what you do, then something is wrong, definitely. But singers and also soloists have to be with you, and you have to be with them, because, as I told you, you are with the orchestra you're on the better side. You are stronger. But this is not nice to be stronger, because you have no partner anymore. And therefore, the comparison between Wagner and Strauss is quite important, because if you see how Wagner developed with also his idea of Bayreuth, and you know that he was not satisfied the first festival, and he said he should change many things, and he was not satisfied with his Tannhäuser, as you know. And a piece like Meistersinger, for example, I did the first time when I came to Bayreuth. Everybody warned me and said this is the most difficult piece there. It is, in fact, not made for Bayreuth. And you feel it. You realize it when you conduct it, because the instrumentation changed. You know, listen to third act Siegfried, Götterdämmerung, Parsifal. When you listen to that in Bayreuth, you will think, it fits. This is a good place here. With Lohengrin, you are not so sure. It's not so silver. The silver is a little bit going away. I don't want to say anything against Bayreuth, but it is not that what you have in an open pit, yeah? That when the Lohengrin prelude starts, that it is kind of, you see the stars. In Bayreuth, it is all a little bit more under a cupola. It's not bad, but you see, Wagner would have changed drastically some things. And also the length of the pieces. I don't know if you, this is something I was also happy with. Usually in Bayreuth, you rehearse the act 1 of Götterdämmerung in 2 pieces, because you go to the Waltraute scene, and from Waltraute to the end is 40 minutes, somehow, approximately. And you do the first rehearsal up to Waltraute, so the interlude after the Hagen thing, and then you go on. And when you start with the second rehearsal and you begin with the Waltraute scene, you think it is probably the most beautiful part. So in the Götterdämmerung ever written, because the Waltraute scene is just breathtaking. The evening, when you sit in the audience, as a conductor too, I can tell you, you reach a point after 1 hour and, Wolfgang Wagner said always, everybody who conducts Act 1 of Götterdämmerung more than 2 hours is wrong, is too slow. So it's about after 1 hour and 20, when the scene begins. You sit there and you think, would be time for a coffee. And for a drink, the conductor does think the same. And we cannot drink. I never take something to this. So I think after, and then this glorious scene comes, And I must say, even conducting it, I don't enjoy it so much. And then Wagner, there is, I think, a remark by Cosima in the diaries, that Wagner would say, the Waltraute, one has to change something there. The music is good, but the pacing is not right. So that's also interesting, that he realized that a length of 2 hours is a lot. Rheingold, as you know, is 220 or so. Holländer, yeah. The first version of Holländer, also the second version without intermission, is 210. It's hard work. It's hard work. For the listener, it's hard work. For the orchestra, it's hard work. And so Strauss was clever. He had his one-act pieces only at about 1 hour 40. Salome, Elektra, Daphne. Daphne is, I think, shorter. But this is the famous 1 hour 35, 40. That is something you can make. If you know after 1 hour and 20, there are only 15 minutes left, then okay. It's a kind of crescendo to the end, accelerando to the end. But if you know there is and it's also something you have to consider when you conduct this music. So you learn. There are no mistakes, but I would never say that Wagner made a mistake. He developed. So as I develop as a conductor, when I know before, I want to enjoy it is very important, this Waltraute scene, and I want to give much energy and much intensity, probably a hold back before a little bit more, that my forces are fresher than at the end. And I mean, I have before conducting an opera like that, I usually think about the end of the piece. Try to get the line into Tristan begins and you think, how is the piece ending? So, and I hope that then a kind of a line and a whole arch of that there is a good beginning and a good end, and that this is, in the end, it is like a ring connected, reconnected. This has also to do with the experience you have as a conductor. And now we come back to, he's only a Kapellmeister. I think a dirigent is not able to do that. A good Kapellmeister, yes. Not all the Kapellmeisters are doing that, because it has a true moment, because very often in the repertoire, and I think that is what they meant when I heard it for the first time. When an opera house plays every evening a different piece, and you have to do it without rehearsal, there can be glorious evenings, but there can also be just that nothing is together. And we have this repertoire system in Germany, which is, I think, very much, it's a very traditional system. It can be very good. It can be, if there are too many pieces all together, it can be very risky. Also for orchestra players. And if a young orchestra player comes into an orchestra, they don't know these pieces. So I ask my players in Dresden or the Vienna players, and I ask them, how does a young cello player coming with 21, 22, so he gets the job, so tonight Lohengrin. You buy a CD now and you ask a colleague and you sit a little bit and you watch the colleagues how they play. But then comes probably a bel canto piece, which is really difficult, because the soprano has a corona somewhere, pits, but you are early with your pits. The colleagues. bel canto can be so difficult. I mean, for conductor too. This is a wonderful music, and for the singers, it's glorious who can sing that, and this is extremely dangerous. Yeah? And therefore, also a type of Italian Kapellmeister is needed. Yeah? But then you say he's a maestro, which sounds. Does it sound better? I don't know. No, it's different. But I mean, it has also to do. Always to do with craftsmanship and so on. I wanted to come to the end. I wanted to say, if you see how in his youthhood Strauss tried with the tone poems to come really to a point, and he knew that he had come to the point of no return in a certain way. Yeah? Orchestra could not play louder because in this way you cannot write an opera, because in fact, if you play things like they are written today in Elektra, the singers are dead after 20 minutes, or let's say after half an hour. Yeah? First scene with Elektra, Chrysothemis, and you play it as it is written. And I think Strauss realized that. So he could count on the good Kapellmeister attitudes of his colleagues, and could show it when he conducted. I mean, how can somebody compose this really hot music and hysterical music and stand in front of the orchestra? It's doing nothing. It's clever. I think it's so clever and so impressive. And he wanted, I think, with one difference. If you ask me, though, tell me about the difference of Wagner and Strauss, also as a type of composer. I would say, as I said before, Strauss was a gambler. He loved to show off his instrumentation genius. Wagner had for everything what he did a philosophical reason. Yeah? He would have never had the idea to say, I do it because I have fun with what Strauss said about Alpensymphonie. So I mean, it happens. Now I did in my last concert, I did the 4 interludes of intermezzo, the intermezzo interludes, which are really funny music with the waltz scene in the beginning and then the Träumerei am Kamin. You see, when it comes to these soft and very melodic pieces, and you play them with a little distance, then they are much more moving. And you think, yeah, I have to give as much sugar as he gave in the music. Wrong, 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 wrong. Much more in Strauss than in Wagner, because a too cold conductor Tristan is nothing. With a Tristan, you have to do certain things, otherwise it is you can not spoil the piece, but you just don't do what is required. The parlando Strauss developed comes certainly from the Meistersinger style, and he was extremely fascinated by that. Listen to Arabella, listen to Rosenkavalier, listen to Meistersinger. That is quite near. Yeah? And that is fascinating, how much Strauss would take from Wagner and what he didn't take, and what he avoided to do. In any case, he admired Wagner very much, and who didn't, and who doesn't? I don't know. I think it's worth it listening to the late Strauss, would I give for you as a little advice, if you listen to Capriccio, for example, and the old Strauss style in which he comes back to a simplicity and avoiding all these fiery and too fiery moments, not because he was an old man. I think because he wanted to show that one could be elegant together with deep felt emotions, because elegance sometimes sounds as if it is superficial. It's not. And Strauss gives us this feeling that elegance can be deeply felt and deeply moving. And if you listen to the four last songs, yeah, and I discussed it very long with my good friend René Fleming, and we spoke about the text, yeah. And if you sing it as a singer with this kind of everything is going to come to an end and I'm so sad and you suffer, it's wrong. The orchestra plays that what it plays, but the singer remains in a certain way, and therefore the famous Strauss voices, Lisa de la Casa, Fleming, Janowitz, Schwarzkopf, they had all this silvery, shimmery, this voice quality, and were never too much vibrato voices. And the more you refer and you think, we sit at the last lead. Yeah? We have had our lives, and we sit here in the evening and we look at the wonderful landscape. There's no sadness. It's a kind of, we think about it. And at the end, then they ask, ist das vielleicht der Tod? Vielleicht. And then Strauss doesn't answer the question. It is the Verklärungsmotiv, yeah? Da, 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 di, di, di. Remains open. And the lead does not finish in a minor key, otherwise it would be C minor or whatever. No, S-dur. E flat major. Golden, shimmery. And certainly he lets us a little bit alone with that. What did he mean? He was too clever to fall, to get into this trap. Think about that. If you listen to good interpretations, and you see and you listen how much a little bit, a little distance, what doesn't mean that you are not participating. That is more moving than somebody who suffers. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, Christian Thielemann will be delighted to take some questions in
Yes.
defiance of inaugural lecture traditions. I do have to remind you all that you are being filmed, and if you want to put your hand up. So phrase your question carefully.
Please. Yes.
When you conduct Wagner and Strauss with an opera orchestra and a symphony orchestra, do you notice a difference between the two kinds of orchestras, so an opera orchestra?
Yeah, certainly. I mean, a symphonic orchestra tends always to play that what is really written, yeah? And they play more offensive, but it can be very good. If you play a Eroica and it starts with a forte, you play the forte. Well, why not? Because you don't have to care about a singer. And certainly if you studied with a symphonic, and then there's the other thing, there are many passages in Strauss and in Wagner which are very difficult. And an opera orchestra knows how to, wie sagt man auf Englisch, schummeln. You avoid, you don't play all the notes. You don't know what I mean. But you make the effect as if everything was. They don't hear it outside. I mean, I had this experience when I did Elektra and Rosenkavalier with Münchner Philharmoniker. This was a wonderful work because finally I heard all the notes, and I would not. I would not tell them. I mean, they found out then later. They said, but this is really difficult. Does one really play all the notes? And then it comes from alone that you don't play all the. But at the beginning, you say, I want to hear every note. That's fine. At the end, it's not. But it's a difference. Yeah.
Do you think some of the later Strauss operas are unjustifiably neglected, such as Ägyptische Helena?
Yeah. Naja, first you don't find a tenor for Ägyptische Helena. I think the tenor question in Strauss operas is really a basic thing, because I have, and many people do too, we have the impression that he hated high male voices. I mean, about the tenor of Ägyptische Helena oder Bacchus in Ariadne, you don't understand why he did that to them. And so then Ariadne is often performed because it's also it is a funny piece, and it is short, and so Ägyptische Helena, I did that already. I did that in Covent Garden. Yeah, you remember. And we and the soprano too, and it is extremely difficult for the orchestra. And don't forget, in these mythological pieces, when he came back, Liebe der Danae und Ägyptische Helena, they are quite difficult to understand, and you don't know what the story is really about. I mean, I must confess that if you asked me, please tell us with 20, 100 words or so, the story of Frau ohne Schatten. But then I would ask you back, then you tell me the story of Trovatore, and you cannot either, and that is that. Yeah, I mean, there are some opera pieces which are not logical, but it is also played because singers, because it's not so played so often, they don't want to study it. And we were very happy, with Deborah Voigt, and so that she said, yeah, I'm going to sing it, I'm going to study it. Usually they say, we don't. But they are neglected. It's not good because it's really wonderful music. Yeah, you're right, but. Bitte.
You described the sort of typical old-fashioned Wagnerian singer, large, powerful. Yeah. Of course, singers today are expected to look good, and they're expected to act.
Yeah.
And is it more difficult to find the singers who can sing Wagner and Strauss? And with modern singers, does the way in which you conduct have to change as well?
Yeah. I have to, if I have a singer without voice, then I have to conduct in a different way, you are right. But the typecasting, you call that typecasting. You say they play themselves in a certain way, as some bad actors do everywhere. They play just themselves. That's wrong, and I cannot change. Certainly, Salome should be 17 years old or something like that. I mean, who can sing with 17 a part like that? That is completely ridiculous. And Isolde is, I think, 19. And Tristan Sachs is 28. So this is completely ridiculous. And I think there is also a compromise between that and a little bit. So, and there are also wonderful costume makers. And sometimes you need... You need light designers which know just to put a dark spot. It is dark at the side, and then you say, because I like voices, and I was never shocked by, let's say, by people who were not so thin, because if the voice is but if the voice is glorious, I can't forget that. I know that there is a certain limit, and one should really, but it has also to do with artist's life. Artist's life is sometimes rather unpleasant, because before the performance you don't eat, and after the performance you do. And what means going to bed after having eaten enough after the performance? You know what I mean. So and it's also, if the fridge is full, then this can be the fridge is your best friend. When you are alone in the hotel room or alone, I mean, so many lonely people, in this business, because traveling around, many people think, the artist's life must be so glorious. They earn money and everybody likes them and so. But do you see an artist coming home from a performance, everybody clapped and bravo, 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 and you go, if you don't have somebody, alone to your hotel room, And you sit there and you think, it's over. I'm alone. So everybody is clapping, saying, oh, she was so wonderful, or he was so wonderful. You have to have a good balance between your private life and your professional life. Yeah? Because then your best friend is the bottle. Yeah, we laugh about that. This interesting question. I must confess, I'm fascinated by the pop business, or also these kind of sentimental Schlager, you have in Central Europe. There is kind of people who sing about life is beautiful and you are the girl I love for all my life. And I went, yeah. Can you imagine how that is when you have to perform in a little hall and you are in a bad mood? I don't know. I'm not in a good mood today, but I have to sing these words and I have to convince you that life in Spain and we dance and we do this and, tequila and everything is so, life is beautiful. But I think to myself, oh, I'm unhappy. I don't know. My private life is terrible or my girlfriend or boyfriend, they left and whatever. But I have to, and I phoned a famous German singer and the singer was totally surprised at, what do you want? And I said, excuse me, I want to ask you something about your business. And this singer said that it is much alcohol in the play. So you go to these and the television things and everybody is in a good mood and then you come home. Yeah? Everything is over. What are you doing? You realize that there's such a contrast between the good mood and the allegria and then so what do you do? 1 glass, 2 glasses, 3 glasses, and that's a sad thing. And I mean, one has to see, you should never do these things, you should not exaggerate. Yeah? And with the eating after performances, I mean, I know it, terrible.
Ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to encourage you, I'm afraid, now to go and have a drink. We're ready and waiting. Can I thank you one more time?
Thank you. Thank you. It's funny. It's wonderful.